All right, gang, we're going to try this one more time. Welcome to the weekly Mac Forum video chat. You are listening to the April 30th edition. This is take two of the April 30th edition. I thought that you guys were not going to get a laugh at my expense this week because I hadn't done anything to really screw up the computer, but apparently I was wrong. You see, when I did the first take of this, I kind of forgot to turn on the streaming software. So we'll get right into things and we'll just kind of pretend that never happened. And you guys can stop laughing anytime now, okay? Uh, hey, if that's the only mistake I made this week on the computer, we're good. I haven't lost any data, haven't blown up anything, so we are good to go. All right. First of all, looks like our newest member, I am guessing that this is supposed to be Hacker. Okay. That's a relatively new one, literally within the last 20 minutes or so. So welcome to them. Welcome to all our new members. And you'll find some very interesting information. Most of the content of the show comes from threads started by forum members that have interesting bits and pieces of information along with them. So what we'll do is we'll just dive right into that information. I'll give you a good idea of what's coming up. First of all, remember Razor Edge, one of the fellow moderators in our admin team, has some information for us about a new piece of, I suppose it's called dock malware, targeting Mac OS. Now, this came out recently because the whole thing, it's not, why does he refer to it as malware versus a virus? It's not a virus in the typical sense of being able to self-replicate or start itself. What it has to do is to trick you into triggering things. It's a phishing scam. And I had a link to some anti-phishing stuff last week. I'll put that in this week's show notes along with the links to everything else. But essentially what this does, we are in tax-paying season here in the United States. The deadline to file your federal income taxes this year was April 18th. And so what we're seeing is a piece of phishing scam where you get an email supposedly from the IRS that says that you need to contact them. And the IRS, or Internal Revenue Service, is the agency in the U.S. that's responsible for collection of all kinds of federal taxes, income, and other things. And so in the email is a zip file that when you download that zip file and open it up, that's what triggers the payload. Okay, and that payload can look at the traffic going in and out of your computer and presumably scoop up anything that is of useful information. Now, Razor has a very good piece of advice here, and that is, I cannot possibly stress this enough. Government agencies generally do not send email with random zip files attached when they need to contact you about this type of information. Tax issues are not going to be handled that way. They will send you a letter. I'm talking paper, pencil, snail mail type letter. Or in some cases, you will get registered letters, things of that nature. But you're not going to get something from the Internal Revenue Service related to taxation in your email. If you do, first of all, I would be very suspicious. Look carefully at the email address. And the second thing that I would do before I open anything, do not open any attachment that you get. Your next step should be to contact the regional Internal Revenue Service office. You can find that address in your local phone directory, or by going through information, they can give you a legitimate number to contact and find out if there really is an issue. My guess is the answer will be no, because as I say, no one, and as Razor mentioned, this is not generally how the Internal Revenue Service would contact you about tax type issues. And I have in the stack of stuff here a link to the original article that Razor provided us with, and it gives you a little more detail. It presents a security message to the user claiming that an update is available for the system and requires that you input your password. Okay, so it's basically two things. It's masquerading as an IRS thing, but it's also telling you that you need to enter your password. So be very careful of this kind of thing, because entering the password is how it gets access to your system. Okay, and what it does, it has complete administrative privilege, which means it can run anything. It can do anything that you could normally do on your Mac. So this goes into a little more detail. It's not a highly technical type argument. I think even if you are not a techie, you'll understand the summary that's presented in this article. The big thing is do be careful with these kinds of phishing scams. All right, next one. Once again, Razor has been busy this week, and he has some information about Apple working on a money transfer system similar to Venmo and WeChat, that kind of thing. And Apple, of course, is getting into this area. It may or may not be a little different from Apple Pay. I think there's still some details to flesh out, and you wonder what might be different. Well, one of the things that might be different is that Apple may focus on it handling payments between other Mac users, iOS device users within the Apple ecosystem. I put it there for those of you that are interested in those kinds of things. You'll probably find it helpful. And as usual, I'll have a link to that and all the other information in the show notes. Show notes probably will not go up until sometime tomorrow, so look for that tomorrow evening. All right, next one. This is a series of posts from member Randy B. Singer. Randy's got a lot of useful information here about the reliability of SSDs, these solid state drives. They're essentially, conceptually, a hard drive on a memory chip. Okay, it doesn't spin around like the traditional platter type drives. It behaves more like a memory chip. And he has some links to some information about the reliability of these drives. Some of the early ones might not have been as reliable on the Mac as they could have been. And there are some other issues. He has a lot of good information there. I haven't chugged my way through all of the articles, but I can tell you that a couple of the sites that he has linked to have a very good reputation for the way they review hardware. I'm looking specifically at Barefeets and tomshardware.com, for example. And essentially, one of the things you have to worry about with SSD drives is, of course, there's a certain degree of truth of you get what you pay for. And some of the early issues with them misbehaving on Macs had to do with trim support. So all of that information is in the various articles that he's linked to. As you can see from the picture, from the screenshot there, it's quite extensively referenced. Might be helpful to those of you that are thinking about shifting to SSDs. As the prices come down, more and more people are doing that. And I have to tell you that even on an older machine, if you make that switch, it can make a difference in some circumstances on how fast the machine runs. Just to give you an example from my practical experience, I had a typical spinning platter type hard drive in my 2008 MacBook Pro. And about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer, I popped in an SSD. And the boot time on that machine was cut roughly in half. Okay, so you're talking about a significant difference. Now that difference shows up primarily when I reboot the system, which I wasn't doing very often. But then it also showed up a little bit, although it was a little less noticeable, anytime I had to write back to the hard drive. So it can come in really handy depending on how you use your system. But there are some things to consider, and I thought this would be a good thread filled with some useful information for you. All right, next one has to do with, once again, something started by one of our forum members, Dave R., about iPads and charging. iPads not charging when they are switched on. And I know what he means. It took me a second when I read this initial post to really understand what he means. Theoretically, you should be able to charge an iPad from the USB port on your Mac. If you have a USB to 30-pin cable for the older ones, or a USB to Lightning cable for the newer iPads, theoretically, you should be able to charge your iPad from your Mac. Now, what he was curious about is why is it that whenever he turned the screen on while it was supposedly charging, it would say not charging. And another one of our forum administrators had the answer. I had this happen before and hadn't really thought about it. One possible reason for that is some third-party chargers just do not have a sufficient amount of juice going through the circuitry to charge properly. I had always assumed that was why I would get that message when the screen is turned on. But Charlie reminds us of something. Some of the iPads, particularly the older ones, when they are on, they were drawing a little bit more current than the USB port could provide. So it wasn't going to charge and have the screen on at the same time. It's like you had to pick one or the other. Now, newer iPads have some slightly different power requirements, and newer Macs have a little bit more power going to the USB ports. But for the most part, you are going to have an issue when you try to charge over a USB connection. Now, what I do a lot of times is either one of two things. I have my iPad charging on a powered USB hub. And by powered hub, I mean the hub is plugged into my computer, but it draws electrical power from a power outlet. It's got a plug-in that goes into the mains, as my British and Australian friends would say. And that works pretty well. The other option is to basically use the wall plug and charge it. It charges quite a bit faster that way. So that'll explain things if you are running into the issue of why does your iPad say it's not charging when over time you'll see that it is, especially if the screen's been off for any length of time. This is why. All right, next on the forum roundup. This is an interesting thing, and I am embarrassed to admit that I had not thought of this. I have been an iPad user since almost from day one. As soon as the pre-ordering opened up, I pre-ordered one. I hadn't planned to, but my wife talked me into it. It didn't take a whole lot of talking. And what happened was The iPad that I had, I didn't try going through and looking at applications until I got the iPad. I didn't bother going into the iTunes store and looking at apps before I got the iPad. Well, one of our members is about to get an iPad. And what he wanted to know was there's an app here that he wants to get, and it's free for a limited time. And apparently, the free offer is going to expire before he actually gets the iPad. So, what he wanted to know was essentially, can I download the app and have it on hand and then put it on the iPad when I get the iPad? And yes, you can. Now, you can do this by going through iTunes, go to the iTunes store in the apps section, logging in with your account information, and downloading the app. That'll put the app on your computer. And then when you get the iPad and have gone through the setup procedure, when you sync the iPad with your Mac, then you will get the application put on there. So you can do that. I'm embarrassed to admit that I had not thought of doing that. That makes things a little bit nicer, and it means that you don't miss out if some developer is putting an app up for free for a few days or at a reduced cost. And that can be a big deal because sometimes the backlog of orders for iPads can be, several weeks. So it's a good thing to know that you can do. And I'm ashamed to admit that I hadn't ever thought of doing that. And I do encourage you to check the iTunes store, the app section regularly, because new stuff is coming out every day. And some of it is very good. And also one other iOS tip that I'll kind of just sneak in right here. Make sure that you set your account so that it asks you for a password when you want to make a purchase. Because a lot of apps have in-app purchases. And what has happened to one or two people is their children or somebody else in the family got a hold of the iPad, made some in-app purchases, and all of a sudden they get a bill for things that they don't remember purchasing. By having your account set in such a way that a password is required, the only way that youngster is going to be able to make a purchase is if they get the password from you or you actually complete the purchase for them. That way you don't get any nasty surprises at the periodically on your credit card. All right, now I'm going to try to squeeze through the rest of the show without making any mistakes after that little fiasco earlier of I was all set to tell you that I hadn't made any mistakes all week, and then lo and behold, I wrecked it during the show. But the other two things that I want to mention tonight come from Kirk McLaren's Kirkville site. Some of you have read Kirk's work through Macworld, but he has his own site which has a lot of different things in it. Primarily, it has a lot of iTunes information. I go there periodically, or especially if I'm having an issue with iTunes that I don't quite understand. And one of the discussions that I've had over there from time to time is this idea that iTunes needs to be split, that it's getting to the point where it's cumbersome, bulky, whatever you want to call it. I have been around Macs since way before iTunes came about. And I remember when iTunes was initially released, it handled music. In other words, you could rip CDs through iTunes, you could catalog them, play them back, and that was about it. Well, over the various incarnations, they're up to 12.6 now, I think. more and more things have been added to iTunes. It syncs with your phone and any of your other iOS devices. It handles applications for iOS devices. It handles movies that you rent from the iTunes store. Certain kinds of books can get handled through iTunes, played back that way. Like a lot of the Audible stuff will play back in iTunes. That's a lot of stuff for one program to manage. And I have, on a couple of occasions, advocated splitting iTunes into a couple of different programs. Take the administrative function, syncing with the phone, tagging, that kind of thing. Put it in one segment, and the device playback, the movie playback, the audio playback, and all of that in a different segment. And which one you launched depended on what you wanted to do. And Kirk kind of disagreed with me, mainly because he didn't see that it would make things any less cumbersome. And I eventually had to concede that he's right about that. I don't know what the solution is, but if you want a good explanation for why splitting iTunes into various segments doesn't really work as well as you would think it would, this article does that for you. On the phone and on the iPad, they're split. You know, there's a podcast app, there's a music app, there's an iBooks app, iTunes University. All those things are separate. That works because of the way the iOS devices are designed to run. We don't use it that way on the computer. That's part of the reason why he thinks it would be more cumbersome to do that. And I have to admit, after reading this article, I agree with him. And so if you're interested in these issues, have a look at this article. It's a very easy read. And at the bottom of it are some other links to information that you might find useful. And one of them, when I read this article yesterday, I clicked on this other one, why you shouldn't use WAV files with iTunes. Now, I do not do a lot with WAV files because generally I'm working predominantly on the Mac. I have some AIF files, but most of my files are in formats that iTunes handles very well. But I was curious as to why Kirk said don't use WAV files. Well, the problem with WAV files is this. Now, on the upside, it's an uncompressed file format, so you should get the same quality of sound that you would get from a CD. But on the downside, just for those of you that may not have already realized it, if you want to use iTunes to keep your music organized, tagging is very important. Making sure that the tracks are tagged with the right artist information, right titles, etc. The problem is WAV files don't seem to have a standardized way of storing that information within the file. So once you move those files outside of your iTunes library for any reason, the links to all that information is lost. Now, what's the solution? Kirk suggests using Apple Lossless as a codec for that. I know that there are some audio files out there that think that you can tell the difference between Apple Lossless and WAV files in terms of sound quality. I will tell you that on my equipment, with my songs that I listen to, everything, I can't tell the difference between Apple Lossless and WAV files. The other disadvantage of WAV files is that they take up significantly more space. A WAV file of a CD, a typical CD, will be somewhere between 650 and 70 megabytes. So you're looking at a significant amount of space when you multiply that out over the thousands of tracks that most people have in their library. So this article presents some good ideas, some good reasons for why you should use something else. And it also has some other links to issues relative to conversion. The Kirkville site's a good place to go if you're interested in audio playback on your computer. As usual, his articles are well thought out, and there's a growing user base out there on that site. So I'll stick that little tidbit in the show notes. As I mentioned earlier, the show notes probably will not go up until sometime this time tomorrow, probably. So don't look for them later tonight. It will probably be this time tomorrow before they go up. And that's going to just about do it for this weekend. I thought I had made it all the way through the show without any screw ups that you guys could laugh at. And then after I finished the show, I suddenly realized that I'd forgotten to turn on the streaming software. So there was no record of this marvelous information. So I went back and got a do-over. And hopefully we won't have any more hitches tonight. I hope that you've enjoyed this information this week. I certainly have enjoyed bringing it to you. Probably next week, I'm going to be looking at some of the accessibility features built into the Mac OS for those of you that are interested in such things. And so I'll see you next week. And until then, this is your host, Sylvester Rock, aka Sly Dude in the forum. I will see you there during the week or maybe next week. So hang in there, guys. I'm going to call it a quits for the night. All right.
You did it better the second time.
Yeah, I know. Because the first time basically got treated as a rehearsal, essentially. Okay, we need to close one more thing. I can't close that window. Okay, there we go. That's the window I wanted. No, that is not the window I wanted to close. Why won't my mouse go